Buenas and Hafide, the public hearing for the Committee on Infrastructure, Economic Development, Simon Sanchez High School Disability Services, Self-Determination, Historic Preservation, Housing, Public Accountability, and the Guam Builder is called to order. It is currently 5:31 p.m., Wednesday, April 26, 2023. This evening, the committee will hear the testimony on Bill 94-37 Core. Notices of this evening's public hearing was provided to senators, stakeholders, and local media on April 19, 5-day notice, April 24, 2023, 48-hour notice, thus meeting the requirements for the open government law. In addition to the notice of this hearing was also posted and available on the Guam Legislature's website. Materials for this public hearing were shared on the committee drive and are available for printing upon request. For sign-in convenience, we've simplified operations and we're using QR codes. So you just sign in on a QR code. For input on the web, you can go to bit.ly/RABQ_sign-in, and you'll receive all the individuals listed there. Okay. Joining me this evening is Senator Telo Taidagui to my left and Senator Chris Malfunction Barnett. Sidus Masi for your presence this evening. Rules of conduct for this first, rules of conduct will provide general rules of conduct for those in attendance. The conduct of this hearing shall be as follows. 1, the chair shall first recognize individuals presenting and state their names for the public record purposes. Questions and testimony shall be confined to substance or nature of the agenda. 3, individuals speaking shall only use respectful and professional language and conduct. Personal interference about the character or motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. The chairperson on committee may order the removal from a hearing of a committee or subcommittee of any person who is not a member of Lias during Gohan and who fails to observe proper decorum according to the 37th Guam Legislature Standing Rules. All must abide by the rules of conduct and quality assurance standards. Any violation of this rule and conduct will result in the removal of this hearing. Thank you for your understanding and cooperation. I also want to recognize Madam Speaker for joining us this evening as well. On the agenda, the committee will hear testimony on Bill number 94-37 Core. Those testifying will be allowed to present written or oral testimony. Testimony may be read and extended to no more than 5 minutes. Written testimony shall be submitted to the committee. Please provide committee staff with your written testimony for photocopying and dissemination. Once you are done, please remain in the room for questions and if any additional testimony is needed, as may be desired by the members of this committee. We will hear testimony from those who have joined us this evening. I would like to call on the individuals based on their names that appear in order in the sign-in sheet. Stand by. We have Speaker Judy Wampat, Maria Gutierrez, Caller Masnayan, Tina Garcia, Angel Sablan, if you can approach the table. Sidus Masi for joining us this evening again. So I'll go ahead and open it up for Speaker Judy Wampat for testimony.
Buenas and half a day, Senator. Senator Quinata, Speaker Terlahi, Senator Taitagui, and Senator Barnett. I am Dr. Wampat, the Acting Superintendent of Education. I thank you, Senator Quinata, for this bill regarding the construction of Simon Sanchez High School. I am in full support of Bill 94-37 relative to the KÅHAT Act. The Guam Department of Education also supports the intent of this bill as it addresses the critical outstanding issues, including but not limited to financing, the providing and installing of fixtures, furniture, and equipment, and insurance and maintenance. In my review of this bill, majority of Bill 32-25, which became Public Law 32-120, or the KÅHAT Act of 2013, were incorporated into this bill. Senators, when I first wrote the KÅHAT bill, I had worked with Public Works, the Office of the Attorney General, and even GEDA to ensure we protect the government. I ask that you consider an amendment to Section 58D-106 on contractual safeguards on page 15. The contract should include obligations typically found in Government of Guam construction contracts, including, but not limited to, the following: warranties, liquidated damages, performance and payment bonds, indemnity, insurance, standard specifications, technical specifications, progress schedule, maintenance, compliance with Guam labor regulations and the prevailing wage rates for employment of temporary alien workers on Guam, and compliance with Public Law 29-98, restriction against contractors employing convicted sex offenders to work at Government of Guam. Regarding Section 58D 104 on procurement, page 14, lines 2 to 3 of the draft provided, DOE respectfully recommends that requests for proposal be replaced with solicitation. This provides more flexibility rather than being locked into one format. An agency should be able to explore all viable options, including but not limited to multi-step invitation for bids. RFPs may include more subjective material in the evaluation and selection of a vendor, and therefore lead to more protests. Based on discussions with DPW, GDOE has a 100% complete design for this project, and so an IFB could possibly be more beneficial. Regarding Section 58-104A, 45 days does not seem enough time to issue a formal solicitation, especially since responsibility for the solicitation is now with another agency. Regarding Section 58D-105 on responsibilities of contractor on pages 14 to 15 should include a reference to the demolition of the existing facility by the contractor. Also, regarding Section 58D-105 on responsibilities of contractor on page 15, line 9, GDOE recommends the insertion of furniture and equipment so that it reads in relevant part, and I quote, "Furniture and equipment maintenance costs shall be paid by the GDOE," so on, so on. This is to confirm the exact maintenance costs that GDOE shall be responsible for. Regarding Section 58D-110 on utilities and routine maintenance and repair, GDOE believes this section should be amended to have the contractor responsible for the connection of utilities with the agency, but DOE be responsible for paying the monthly utilities services unless the intent is for the contractor to pay for utility services and bill DOE or the government. GDOE requests this be clearly identified within this bill. Lastly, regarding additional funding, the federal funding for this project will only be available through September 30, 2024. This is a three-year construction project, which will mean the government will need approximately $6 million for the remaining construction management portion of this project. That's the CM. So we only will be able to do 1 year of $2 million. Once again, I would like to thank you for your work on this matter and the opportunity to provide input on behalf of GDOE.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Mr. Adda, can you go ahead and approach the table? I'm so sorry. We got to go off track a little bit. I kind of jumped a step. I want to acknowledge my colleague for joining me, Senator Sabina Perez, my former teacher of Simon Sanchez. Welcome. So I know Senator Tello was here. Did you have any comments for us this evening? Or do you want, we just continue? We're okay? Okay, we'll just carry on. So, the principal of Simon Sanchez, you are next.
Good evening, Senators. Thank you for the opportunity to provide input for Bill 97-34. I am the principal of Simon Sanchez High School. I am also a graduate from the class of 1990, and especially now, I am a parent of a student that goes to Simon Sanchez High School. Let me start with a story. This rebuild journey has been a roller coaster ride for the Simon Sanchez community, a journey that spans almost 10 years. In 2014, a law authorized the government to issue a request for proposal for the construction of Simon Sanchez High School. 3 protests later and a failed attempt to make Simon Sanchez a charter school, GDOE was placed in charge of the procurement process to rebuild our new school. There were 3 phases, starting with the land surveying, next the architectural design, and finally the construction. We had renewed hope because we actually saw people on campus surveying the land. This was the farthest that we have ever been in this rebuild project. Then the pandemic happened in 2020 and we shut down. This pandemic again did not stop us. The design team continued to meet with architects via Zoom for almost 2 years, going over the layout, conducting site visits to the school, down to the details of the type of furniture each class will need. We were actively involved in the design of Simon Sanchez. It was not until we approached the 90% submittal that environmental biologists found endemic snails occupying a portion of our property. Who would have believed that snails would further delay the rebuild? Again, we moved on, we did not stop, we kept moving forward, and we adjusted. All in all, we, the community of Simon Sanchez High School, have met our task in this project. But what about everyone else's task? We thought that the snails would be the last of our hurdles, but here we are today. Now, upon review of Bill 9734, please note that I am no expert in the procurement process. My background is in education, but I would like to note a few items in the bill, maybe for clarification purposes, or perhaps something to think about from an end user perspective. The contract will be for 1, financing, 2, construction, 3, FF&E services, and 4, instruction and maintenance. Section 58D110 indicates that the contractor will be responsible for all utilities and routine interior maintenance. Please include the term exterior if we're going to itemize interior, in addition to routine interior maintenance. Items like painting the exterior walls every so many years or maintaining and replacing the track due to wear and tear would be a few examples of exterior maintenance that would be routine. Based on experience, I would like to avoid situations wherein the contractor will say, we're not responsible for painting because the law only indicates interior. Next, the term upkeep follows the term groundskeeping and landscaping. So upkeep is kind of like a general term. So the question that comes up with this is, will custodial services also be included in the upkeep, or will that be part of Section 58D111 under Maintenance Fund, wherein it states that items not included in 58D110 will be a separate cost paid for by GDOE? And lastly, under Section 58D104, under Procurement, the evaluation committee shall be comprised of the superintendent, the director of public works, the Director of Land Management, and Administrator of Guam Economic Development Authority, or their respective deputy directors or administrator. It is my hope that the school community be provided the opportunity to give valuable input in the scope of work for quality control regarding maintenance or repairs, or for custodial work, or other subcontract that directly affects the day-to-day operations. For example, If the contractor intends to subcontract certain services, such as custodial services, it will be beneficial for the school to be a part of the quality control to ensure that the tasks are being done in a timely manner, and if the work is unsatisfactory, that there would be language included as a remedy to hold the subcontractors accountable. After all, we are paying millions of dollars every year for 30 years. Also under procurement, if the law is passed, DPW shall issue a request for proposal. If I recall, the last time we did an RFP for the construction that included all the services and the bid, it was protested 3 times. When the procurement was turned over to GDOE, a multi-step bid was identified as the most efficient process to minimize the risk of protests. Offers were based on qualifications to fulfill the requirements and awarded based on the bid amount. What would happen to the multi-step bid process that we are currently in should this bill pass? We currently have the school design and FF&E services that was part of the TRMA contract. A construction manager to oversee the construction on behalf of GDOE is still pending. With this RFP, who will oversee the construction on behalf of GDOE? Who will make sure that the plans are being followed and that the best interests of the department is kept? Will this be the role of DPW? Will a new proposal have to be made? What happens if we get protested again? Will there be another bill to fix it? We are still left with so many questions that hopefully we'll be able to get clarification this evening. But most of all, I am afraid that any further delays in the construction will result in another increase in construction cost, as the case that happened with our rebuild. So again, that concludes my input for this evening. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak this evening. In June, we will graduate another cohort of seniors who have been waiting for their new building. They will leave us with the hope that when their younger siblings come up, they will be in the new Simon Sanchez. But it is my hope that the end result of these public hearings will make the new Simon Sanchez a reality for our Shark community and stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Masanayan. Ms. Gutierrez, you recognize.
Thank you, Senator. Good evening, Senator. Thank you. Sizus Marcy ni mangai gam zuguni. Anong namzu manim mampus manim magai interes na penazuda Simon Sanchez. Thank you, Senators, for this, those that are here tonight. It shows that your heart to help Simon Sanchez is really true. My name is Maria Gutierrez. I am not really here to testify as a Guam Education Board member. It might be when, as I do my testimony, shows that there's the board's issue, part there. But I'm here as a citizen, a grandparent, who had wished that my great-grandson will graduate in the class of 2023 with a brand new school. Senator Quinata, I remember you during your graduation, and I was there shaking your hand after you received your diploma. Senator Terlahi, if you recall, the students of Simon Sanchez, when the bill was introduced, was having a rally calling out all the senators, pass the bill, pass the bill, pass the bill. And thank you, because you did pass the bill. It was signed into law. Former Governor Calvo stood in one of the graduation ceremony and said, Simon Sanchez, you will have a new school in 4 years. This is already 10 years. I support this bill for the sake that we need to move on with the Simon Sanchez. The students, the stakeholders of GIGO have been waiting for this. No more of the delay. It's unfortunate that I won't have any other grandchildren or great-grandchildren in the Jigo community to be able to try the new Simon Sanchez unless they relocate and Mayor Sanchez will allow. This is for the students. As I listen to Principal Masdayon, it brings back a lot of memories because I was sitting as a chair of the board, as a vice chair. We were there to talk to the students. We were there when they wanted to be, and I know that maybe Senator Perez was still a teacher at Simon Sanchez. We were there when two senators wanted to make it a charter school. The students, the teachers, the stakeholders of Simon Sanchez, the people of Jigo wants a new school. No more delay. I have walked the Simon Sanchez as a chair of the Safe and Healthy Schools for the last few years. And I'm not finished because I will be there again. And I have seen what it is. One thing I didn't see was the rats. But I saw the cockroach, please. So Senator, thank you for this bill. Let's move forward for the sake of the children of Simon Sanchez. Senator Chris, I know your boys will soon be as freshmen at Simon Sanchez. Maybe not by the time the construction is finished, but por favor, Senador, let's move forward. Because they have waited so long. They have waited so long. And that's why really when I see Senator Quinata up there, it's like, wow, I remember that year when I had to shake his hand. But there's no new school. So is it going to be 4 more years before we see a new school, or we will see it soon? Thank you. And again, I'm here as a private citizen, as a grandmother, great-grandmother, but also I had to put in because I was so involved as a member of the board, as a chair and a vice chair. And those times when those protests was coming left and right, it was very disgusting. Jesus Masi, buenas noches.
Jesus Masi, Mrs. Gutierrez. We'll have Ms. Tina Garcia from GEDA now.
Hafaday, Senator Quinata, and members of the Committee on Infrastructure, Economic Development, Simon Sanchez High School, Disability Services, Self-Determination, and Historic Preservation, Housing, Public Accountability, and the Guam Buildup. My name is Tina Garcia, Public Finance Manager at the Guam Economic Development Authority, and I'm here to read the testimony of our Administrator, Melanie Mendiola, who apologized for not being here as she's not feeling well today. Thank you for the opportunity to provide this testimony in support of Bill 94-37. The Guam Economic Development Authority, in its role as the central financial manager and consultant for the government of Guam, monitors and advises the government on financial options that can support and achieve financial goals and objectives. We thank the 8 sponsors of Bill 94-37 as it brings us closer to secure a developer who will carry out the construction, financing, and maintenance of the Simon Sanchez High School. One of the major changes made in this bill was the removal of a provision that allows the financing to be issued through GEDA, which was a provision that was causing challenges tied to the procurement of the developer. Bill 94-37 is now structured to reflect the legislative language used for previous developer school lease financing. This change was made by the working group to ensure we face minimal procurement protests. GEDA will continue to work to ensure the financing is in the government's best interest. We also note that Section 58D-104 was changed to reflect that Department of Public Works and not the Department of Education will issue the RFP for this project, as DPW has the experience to issue capital project procurements. We respectfully recommend that Section D of this section to be amended to state that the issuing procurement authority DPW in this case, be the one to make the award on behalf of the Department of Education. Thank you for the opportunity to explain our full support of 94-37. Should you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact Melanie Mendiola at the Guam Economic Development Authority. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Garcia. We'll have Mr. Peter Alexis Adda.
Thank you, Senators. Senator Quinata, thank you for the personal invitation. And there was a follow-up call today, and I really appreciate that. Senator Taitagui, Speaker Chirlahi, Senator Barnett, he ran away, and Senator Perez. I had prepared my testimony. I don't know whether any of you have ever experienced it, but once you just finished it and you try to print it, malfunction. It didn't work. So when I was looking at it, I said, well, you know what? You just talk too much, so cut it down. And I will, Senators. First of all, I do support Bill 94-37. Has anyone seen, because I have not seen, a structural design for Simon Sanchez? I haven't. If not, I was the chairman at the time when it was supposedly the southern and the northern high schools to be built. And at that time, it was the military kids were still on board. But since they left, we were left with an abundant vacant classrooms. Maybe we should take a look at that and just downscale it. It's already been paid for. Something that the legislature, the superintendent, may want to look at. Anything that we can save. I would highly, I don't know, I'm sure a lot of you have been to Southern High School. You, Senator, graduated in that school. You've been to the main building. No windows. If anything happens, it's pretty bad. So I would highly recommend, I've listened to all of the testimonies, but I'd like to recommend, insist that there be windows in that building. Rather than using central air, and you know what happens to central air, if it breaks, a lot of the classroom, or a lot of the areas will be unable to function. So I really would recommend go into split units, because that one you can replace. Something that could be considered. Another thing, and I'm glad that Senator Barnett is here to listen to this part. We need to start taking care of our handicapped and sometimes temporary disabled children. We should start, you know, I was down at Southern High School, and I was informed by an individual there that the elevator in building 100 has not been in operation for 3 years. Well, when I was at Public Health, we had the same problem, but I came before this legislature and I asked, I was told we needed $125,000 to repair it. And I don't know, Speaker Wampat, I think, was Speaker at the time. And we were able to get it. But an alternative to that is an indoor ramp so that it can be used by the children that need accessibility Also, people that have to move bulk things, you know, it would help them. It's going to be an incline, it's true, but it will be much easier than having to carry it step by step. By the way, I cut my presentation down, so I'm down towards the end. Restrooms, please, please, please. Handicap accessibility from the door to the stall. Something you might want to consider. Since we're already going to build it, might as well bring it up. Surveillance cameras to include outdoor. But I don't know whether Mrs. McKnight, the principal, has ever experienced it, but damages to the files of the schools. We've got to take care of that. And lastly, I asked the legislature to consider something that I'm sure could be done. To talk to the businesses and offer and ask them to donate surveillance cameras for the schools of their choice and offer them a tax exemption. I'd like to make that offer to all of you, and I look forward to being at, I'm sure, Senator Quinata, I was at your graduation. I am very sure. And I want to thank all of you for this opportunity, and I hope that the present 7th graders will be able to graduate in Simon Sanchez. If not, maybe the 3rd graders might be able to see a graduation at that school. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that testimony, Mr. Adda. We'll now recognize Mr. Sablan.
Good evening. Bonito na po ingin Zeus. Hello, Senor Quinata, Chairman of Simon Sanchez High School. Hello, Speaker Therese Terlahi, Senator Taitagui. Hello, Senator Malafunction Barnett, Chair of Education, an accomplished teacher of Simon Sanchez, Senator Perez, and may I add, an accomplished student and alumni of Simon Sanchez, Senator Quinata. I'm Angel R. Sablan. Although I am a new member of the Guam Education Board, my comments are not representative of any adopted testimony from the GEB. Unfortunately, we were not able as a board to discuss this bill and offer a board-driven testimony due to the time constraints and the open government law requirements. So I appear today as a parent of 3 students who were looking forward to graduating from a new Simon Sanchez High School. While they did graduate, the school was never built. I also come as a parent of a teacher at Simon Sanchez High School, who since her graduation from Simon Sanchez in 1997, and after college at UOG, returned to her alma mater in 2002 to give back to her school community as an English teacher. She has never been assigned to another school. Principal Masnayon can attest to the loyalty of A.C. Joe Cruz to the home of the Sharks. Simon Sanchez is where she shared the dreams of hundreds of students and helped them grow into successful adults. Her dream of a new Simon Sanchez High School is the same dream each and every student she taught had. Since the day they were promised a new school in 2012, up to this day, that teacher has never given up hope, because she knows that even though many students have graduated and their dreams did not come true, there are thousands more that will be attending Simon Sanchez, perhaps the sons and daughters of the very students my daughter nurtured and taught. So as a private citizen and a concerned parent, these are my comments. Bill 94-37 COR is an act to repeal and reenact Chapter 58D of Title V Guam GCA relative to the KÅHAT Act of 2013. It seems that Bill 9437 COR repeals in its entirety Chapter 58D of Title V. Line 9 of the new proposal, page 12. Chapter 58D, KÅHAT Act of 2013, is to be repealed. Then should it now be reenacted to read KÅHAT Act of 2023? Otherwise, it will be more fitting to call it the KÅHAT Act of 2013. On line 15 to 19, page 12, definition of contract. While I am not one to add on to more bureaucratic red tape to get projects going or implemented, I do not see any mandate in this bill for the Guam Education Board to have a say in the construction of the new Simon Sanchez High School. I point this out because I have heard over the years, what is the GEB doing about Simon Sanchez High School? Line 1 to 6A, page 14. This section shall issue a request for proposal, RFP, in 4 different areas. Does this mean that there can be 4 different offerers and possibly 4 different contracts based on what area a contractor submits a proposal on? This section also mentions school design. I understand that the design is 100% completed, but has it been accepted by the GDOE? Line 17 to 25, page 14. This section probably answers my question about how many contractors to be awarded. This section makes it clear that only one contractor who will be responsible for all costs, expenses, and fees of any kind and nature, inclusive of construction, permits, furniture, fixtures, and equipment services, maintenance, and insurance. If this is the case, then we need a contractor that is well-rounded, financially stable, experienced, and knowledgeable in school construction and furniture and fixtures. On line 23 to 24 on page 14, these 2 lines state, contractors shall also be responsible for maintenance of the new Simon Sanchez High School. But on line 9 to 11, page 15, it states, maintenance costs shall be paid by the GDOE on a periodic basis as incurred by the contractor. So does this mean that the contractor will do the maintenance, but GDOE will pay for it? Line 16 to 18, page 16. The principal amount of financing authorized under this section shall not exceed $166,365,000. This is the same amount in Chapter 58D, Title V, and that was back in 2013. Now, 10 years later, it is still the same amount? Are we shortchanging the construction of the new Simon Sanchez High School? We all know the cost of everything has gone up since 2013. Line 1920, page 16, section 58D 109, lease back payments under the lease payable from lawfully available monies. The current Chapter 58D, Title V, GCA, section 58D 106F states, the leaseback agreement shall include a provision that no rental payments, reserve, advance, or deposit payments shall be paid by the government of Guam to the successful contractor until and unless the entire education facility has received a full occupancy permit and the education agency accepts the project. Does it not make sense to keep this provision in the proposed Bill 9437? My dear Senators, the construction of a new Simon Sanchez High School has been a dream of many students, teachers, staff of Simon Sanchez High School ever since. Every year, our students are promised that their dream will come true. And every year, it just becomes a pipe dream. I hope that this new proposal is the key that will turn on the ignition to start the new Simon Sanchez High School engine. We have waited long enough. We cannot continue to run on idle and run out of gas again. This time, let us put the new Simon Sanchez High School on drive and let us reach our destination. No more reverse, no more park. The Sharks deserve a brand new state-of-the-art vehicle to learn in and to graduate from. Let us make it happen for them. Sinceramente, yours truly, Angel Sablan.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Sablan. I'll go ahead and call up Mr. Joe Borja to the table.
I don't want to sit in Peter's chair because it takes long. My name is Joseph Borja, Department of Land Management Director. Just 3 comments. Number 1, considering the makeup of the evaluation committee, you have the Director of Public Works or Deputy Director. Both of those are unclassified position and could subject to change at any time. I suggest that you include the Building Permits Administrator in there, which is a classified position, so that you have some sort of continuity of the project. Second item is the Director of Land Management or Deputy Director. Again, those are unclassified positions, subject to change. And I would include in that slot for land management possibly the Guam Chief Planner. Okay, that's not me now. And the third item is that I note that Principal Masnayon said that the design is about 90% complete. We just have to be careful that those plans are not stale or not outdated by the deliverance here. That's basically it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Borja. Ms. Ibanez, I know you didn't sign in just yet, but I know you're in our presence. So would you like to speak right now, or we'll come back to you? I can entertain one more person before you. Okay, Ms. Masanayan, I'll go ahead and have you read Dr. Ronald Canos' testimony for the record. Thank you.
Thank you. We had sent out an invitation to our community to provide testimony in support of the bill. So Dr. Canos was one of the teachers that had submitted one. So I'd like to read his testimony. Dear Senators, thank you for the opportunity to provide my testimony. My name is Dr. Ron Canos. I am a National Board Certified Teacher and a former Guam Teacher of the Year. I have been a teacher at Simon Sanchez High School for the past 25 years. With that number of years, I am proud to say that I have given a quarter of my life to public service, the Department of Education, and the student community of GEGO. Nevertheless, in those 25 years, I never felt the desires to speak on the state of our school. I was never lured away by other schools who offered greater opportunities. I never sought to be paid for my perceived worth, nor for my credentials earned. It never crossed my mind of being anywhere else, because in 25 years of service, Simon Sanchez High School was my home. However, our home has seen and needs better days. Our current facility is outdated, overcrowded, and in desperate need of repair. Do not get me wrong. The family within our walls are as strong as ever, but the walls, like our optimism, is deteriorating. I find it strange that we are here providing testimony for our needs of a new school. It feels like we are speaking about the worst-kept secret in our community. It feels like we are here to participate in a process that has been ongoing for the last decade. To keep things in perspective, some families have kids that are separated by 4 years of age. With regards to a new school, in that respect, we have not just failed our students, we have failed generations. Generations of family members, brothers, sisters, cousins, and now some of them even parents who have all heard the same promise. Just wait till we get a new school. Still, here we are, once again doing our part to be a part of the process. Promises, process, and procurement. Rinse and repeat. I feel the most important element missing in that mix is progress. Perhaps we can speak on those terms. The GEGO community is proud, we endure, we respect, but when we walk into an emergency room with a gunshot wound, we don't expect Band-Aids. You ask for our voice. Our voices have not changed. Generations have voiced the same message year after year. We need a new school. Since 2014, we have endured broken air conditioning, closed down temporary buildings, and rain-soaked hallways and classrooms. We have avoided bathrooms at all costs. Spend some days with us, and not just a few hours, and you will understand why. We have put up with insufficient equipment, unavailable resources, unreliable power sources, and makeshift solutions in the hopes of creating some semblance of a learning environment for our students. Staff have put in long hours. Teachers have spent countless dollars, and administrators have exhausted all avenues of help to the point of exhaustion themselves. And parents and students have endured. If there is one thing that we do at Simon Sanchez High School is that we figure it out, because we do not run on promises, we run on people. There are clear benefits to building a new school. I am sure you are surrounded by all the research in the world that can point you to those conclusions. I am sure you will hear testimony today that will speak to the troubles that plague our students on a daily basis. But I also hope you gain a clear picture of all the good that exists within our walls. The heights our students achieve despite the shortfalls of our facilities. But more importantly, what opportunities can be further created by an environment and facility that parallels their optimism and enthusiasm. I remember a funny comment someone in attendance at our annual Sharkcella event said. He said, "Wow, that was a great performance. They should have had that at the UOG Fieldhouse or someplace nicer." Sure, yes, but we absolutely chose to have our event at Sanchez. There is a clear action needed to address the ills of Simon Sanchez High School. There is a clear message you send with your actions. A message of progress, not promises. A message that transcends politics and finally just addresses people. Perhaps it is not our voices you should be listening to today. What does your voice say? What do you champion? Who do you inspire? Ultimately, the most important decisions are in your hands. Simon Sanchez High School and the Village of GEGO are listening. Respectfully, Dr. Ron Canos, National Board Certified Teacher and Guam Teacher of the Year 2008. Thank you.
Thank you for that testimony, Ms. Massanan, on behalf of Mr. Canos, or Dr. Canos. So, with that being said, again, we're here to really get a tried and true, proven school built, right? We've seen other schools been tried and tested in their building capacity, they've been built. We had elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools built. So we're all here to really find some real resolve. I am an alumni of Simon Sanchez, and as much as anyone wants to say out there that I've done nothing for my school, I was the class that shut down the school. So I am doing my very best. Although I am a freshman senator, I will continue to pave the road to getting this school built, even if it's my casket legislation. If I lose the election for this school, at least I had some impact. So it is 10 years too late, 10 minutes too late, but I'm here to try to rectify all these situations and all these issues that have arisen in this time. I hear the issues that we have, again, with this bill. So I will take all the recommendations in, and we'll go ahead and go around in order of who came, and then we'll answer those questions But I'll go ahead and defer to my colleagues if they have any questions or want to make any statements at this time. Senator Tello, since you were here first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The early bird gets the worm, right? First, I'd like to thank you all for being here tonight. You know, it's always such a bad feeling when you're in between dinner and having to hear us speak. So please don't hold it against us. I'll try and make it as quick as possible. Speaker Wampat or Acting Superintendent Wampat, it's always good to see you. The bill, the original bill, was written by, during your time, correct? And was written by you?
Yes, it
Okay.
was.
I appreciated that bill because it actually had what is called a legislative intent. And I was just wondering, you know, why this bill left out the legislative findings and intent on this bill. So do you think it should be included? Or an explanation, just to keep that same clarity that you did, you know, especially when someone's researching this, it kind of gives you the story. So do you think there should be one?
I mean, there's two schools of thought about either one putting in the intent and the other is just getting right to the chase. But the original bill, of course, basically covered other school facilities, and that's the first portion of the bill that, you know, you have are repealing, and then the other half of it then is the actual bill that addresses Simon Sanchez. So, I mean, either way, it doesn't bother me. I'm happy, and I told the senator I'm just happy that, you know, you've actually made, you know, a referral back again to, you know, the original bill and pull out just what you need for Simon Sanchez. So, okay. And yes, it will remain as KÅHAT Act of 2013.
Okay. Speaker Wampat, have you, or Acting Superintendent, was there another bill prior to the bill that you created in the 32nd?
Yes, that was a public law 32-120.
Okay.
And the bill number was 3225.
Yours was 3225, correct?
So 32-120 is the public law, and the bill itself is 32-25.
Okay, yes, but was there a bill prior to
No,
address
this-
Okay,
this
this
is
was
the-
the main bill. Okay.
But what had happened the year after I left, already I saw that several members of the legislature were amending the law to the point where it was no longer a lease to own, and it wasn't public works, but rather now to actually make a government entity such as, you know, GEDA to go out and finance this themselves. And so when I came in, we were looking at the most recent bill, not this bill, but a recent bill that we found, and all the attorneys found it problematic. We couldn't get around it. And then eventually, in a table of Public Works, attorneys, GEDA, ourselves, our attorney, and we finally came to the decision that the best way, the smoothest way, and with really as little protest as possible, will be then to go back to, again, the lease to own, which was actually modeled after when we did JFK and Okadu, and we just kind of refined it with the help of the Attorney General, Public Works, and GEDA.
Okay.
Hence this bill.
How old is Simon Sanchez?
Gosh, I don't even have.
What year?
Sorry, I don't have the date, but I do know that we don't have, our schools are anywhere between 45 to 50 years of age.
I think, Senator, it was a middle school at that time.
At the time?
Yeah.
It was a junior high school
Junior
in
high, yeah,
Simon
1980.
Sanchez Junior High.
Yeah, so 1980, because I was moved to F. Bill Young Royal Middle School, and Simon Sanchez was a junior high school.
So it was 1980?
When I was there.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it was built in 1980 then?
No,
About-
way before that.
Before that?
Before that.
Okay.
If you see that
So nobody seems to know what year the school was built, and here we are, you know, ready to break it down. Not even know when it was built.
It was built in 1974.
1974, okay. How old is GW High School? What year was that? Okay.
GW is much older. I think it's one of our oldest.
Much older, right?
Yes, yeah.
Much older school. Okay, just wanted to know the dates on this. Okay. 51 years old, huh? Okay, wow, that's long. So I'm going to go to GEDA. Can you explain to me what the language here that says, where is that? Wrote it down. What does tax exempt obligation mean? Where is that money coming from?
Thank you, Senator. Tax exempt obligation is tax exempt to the bondholder that invests in the bonds. So if they buy a government bond from a government, that's considered tax exempt. If they buy a corporate bond, Xerox or whatever, that's taxable. So that's the main difference. There can be government taxable bonds if we refund before the limit, but in most cases, when you're financing a government project, it's tax exempt bond. Now, there are 3 levels of tax exemption: federal, state, and county. When an investor gets a Guam bond, they get a federal tax exemption, and that's what they like about the Guam bonds.
So the funding of this school will be a contractor going out to get this type of bond?
Yes.
You know, it's probably not on Guam, because if we were to sell anything, I mean, what does that have to do with our debt ceiling as well? And can you tell me what our current debt ceiling is right now?
Yes. So if we do a lease finance, it will not impact the debt ceiling, because should the government not be able to, God forbid, be able to make a debt service payment, our developer has the right to say, okay, then you will allow me, because I have to continue to make my debt payment, you will allow me to rent it to someone else. Kick us out, rent it to someone else for the same purpose.
Okay.
So that's the difference between a lease financing. And that's why it doesn't apply to our debt ceiling, because we can always walk away. Our current debt ceiling, and this is as of March 31, we have about a debt ceiling of about 1.2 billion. We have GovGuam debt subject to the debt ceiling of about 916 million. And so available for future debt obligation is about 300 million.
300 million right now,
Yes.
currently?
Yes.
Okay. And what is our rating right now?
Our rating for the general government is, we're a non-investment grade B rating.
We're in a B?
B, yeah. We have made strides. We've been able to, I apologize, it's a double B for the general government, double B negative, stable, under Standard & Poor's.
Mm-hmm.
Under Moody's, we just got a rating, an outlook upgrade. So we were a BA1 stable, and in March we became BA1 positive outlook. But it's still considered non-investment grade.
Right, exactly. Okay. Can you tell me on your paragraph, that the testimony that you provided, where it says one of the major changes made in this bill was the removal of a provision that allows the financing to be issued through GEDA. Why is this so difficult? I mean, GEDA handles so many projects.
Yes.
And now this particular project is not really good for GEDA to handle. I mean, you're almost putting yourself to say that we can't be doing these projects anymore, and you
Yes.
guys, that's how you make your money at GEDA.
When we say the provision to issue the bonds through GEDA, the struggle we were having was on the procurement side, because you're getting a developer and usually he's on the hook for the financing. But with GEDA issuing the bonds, we're directly reporting to the trustee. And so the question was, what is our relationship with the developer? Or what does the developer have to do with GEDA? So there was that, is GEDA a subcontractor of the developer? But GEDA is a government agency. And so the attorneys were having a difficult time trying to come to terms with that. And they felt that it was, because it was hard for them to understand, it could be a major procurement challenge.
Yeah, you mentioned that earlier. I just don't understand how, now this would not be good for GEDA because it causes problems that tells us what's going to happen in the future if GEDA
I could
wants to go.
explain one more.
Okay,
So for example, we do the Simon Sanchez, GEDA issues the bond, and the developer is building it and so on. Because the bonds are issued through GEDA, GEDA is beholden to the trustees. The developer is there, and he has his assignment saying, I have to insure, maintain, construct. But then after I'm done with that, I can walk away. And that's what we were afraid of, is that, or that was what was the issue, is they have no financial tie to the project because they're not paying a debt. The government through GEDA is paying the debt, whereas under the current leases, JFK, Ukuru, and the other three schools, they have a financial obligation as well as a fiduciary obligation to ensure that the school's maintained and the bill is paid.
But that's part of the contract.
Right. I mean, it's part of their contract to do the insurance, maintenance, and construction.
Right.
But then the financial part is the government side. So it's like we're paying them to do it, but
Right.
then
I
in
understand.
essence, the lease should be tying them to the debt. But that was, it's done in the mainland, a true public-private partnership, but based on our history of procurement and the challenges, they felt that it could be a trigger for another challenge.
I see.
Because the relationship between the GEDA and the contractor was hard for them, was hard to define.
And it says here that 8.5% is it, in the agreement here, 8.5%, is that a realistic percentage in today's time?
It is realistic. When we did JFK back in 2010, the interest rate was 7.5.
Yeah, but that was during a time,
It was still
COVID wasn't happening,
Yeah.
Our dollar is weakening.
Right.
So is really 8.5%.
Our financial advisor advises that we're still able to do it under the 8.5.
And it says $16,337,125. Is that the annual debt that we can't go above that, right? And is that kind of cohesive with the 8.5? I mean, if you look at the full amount of 166 million and then you look at the percentage and then you're looking at the 16, that's
Right.
true to form?
So that annual cap is to cover our rental payment. Rental payment covers two specific items. One is the debt service that is paid for the money that's borrowed, and the second is to cover insurance and maintenance. And so at 8.5, if we went out today, borrowed money, we'd be paying about 15.5 million in quote debt back to the bondholders. And so the remainder of the cap here would be left for the insurance and maintenance.
I see. Okay. I have another question. Okay, I'll come back if I have any other questions. Thank you so much.
Yes,
Thank you, everyone.
thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'll have, I don't know if it was Speaker or Chris. I think it's Senator Chris Malfunction. You were here first. You're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening to our GDOE and Simon Sanchez Sharks family. I understand guarded optimism because I think you've heard this before, right? And so I just want to say how much I appreciate you guys coming to the public hearing with your red pens and all of your suggestions, because we do want to make sure that we get this right the first time, again, the first time. Because I just want to apologize on behalf of previous legislatures. I think that was meddling with the law that former speaker had introduced and breaking it up and doing all kinds of things. I think there was also a veto override involved. And so I felt like the original law, which is pretty much like this one that we're introducing again, was the right answer. But then, like I said, through a variety of what I would say was political meddling, and there was probably some special interests involved in there. We got so far away from the construction that here we are a decade later, right back at the beginning again. And so I definitely appreciate, like I said, you guys bringing all of your suggestions to the table, and I want to work with Senator Quinata, and I commend him for having the passion to pursue this as a Simon Sanchez Shark grad. I don't think you could write a better story than that. You know, you have a former student who was involved in being vocal about the conditions at the school at the time he attended the school, later elected senator, and now introducing this measure, which, you know, knock on wood, rabbit's foot, don't sweep after 6 p.m., do all your good luck. I hope we can see this through. So I'm just really here to show my support for this measure and for the Sharks family. I don't really have many other questions other than the design. I know that, so the question I did have is we're going to be using the design that was already shared previously.
It was paid for, and it's about 500 pages. If you want to get a copy, we can send it to you.
Yeah. Okay, I'll take that. And is this the one with the indoor firing range? For ROTC? No, it's not. It's not. There's no indoor firing range.
Senator.
I believe there is.
Yeah, Senator Chris.
Yes, ma'am.
The design, the stakeholders of Simon Sanchez from the beginning were involved.
Right.
From the way the restroom, the hallway, they were all involved. Students, parents, even at the time, Mayor Matanani, I know Mayor, Vice Mayor, now Mayor Sanchez, the principal, because I was also involved. Former Superintendent John Fernandez present the design to the board. And that's also where I question that I know the Roxy wanted more space. Right. And when I saw that they're giving JP Torres 13 classroom, I questioned that. Give it to the Roxy instead of the JP Torres, because when you give them more classroom, like we're encouraging the students not to really do their best. But we were presented by Fernandez and the design, but that design came from the Sanchez stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. G. So, Mrs. Messanian, is there an indoor firing range? Because I remember hearing about this.
Maybe just to clarify, it's for our marksmanship program under the ROTC, so it's for airsoft rifles.
Thank you. Okay, right on. You got me a little nervous there. And are there any issues with the design? What year was this released? Do you know?
When we ended with TRMA, it was about, I believe, 2021, the spring. So they were still working on the finer details in terms of equipment.
Right. And so you don't, there's no issues with the design being dated? No. Okay. Thank you.
Can I ask Ms. Linda to clarify if that's, I used to do permitting, and I know that there is a grace period between development. So can you clarify if the TRMA, F&E, if it's permitted, right? I think it's like 90 days, or it depends on how big the project is, correct? Sorry, can you come to the table?
Hi. So there is a design. I guess GDOE has a design, TRRA. So they're at a design phase of 90%, I believe. The certification should be by their professional engineers and stamped on their design permits. I can't say because DPW has not seen GDOE design plans from TRRA. We'll reach out to the acting superintendent to see that, and we'll go from there. But currently, DPW has not seen TRRA's design. We were part of the process, and later on, we were not included after that. So we didn't know what percentage they were at that point in time.
Okay, thank you for that. Back to you, Senator Barnett.
Thank you, Senator Roy. Are there any other issues that we anticipate causing further delays? I'm just thinking of the snails, so just for the viewing public, are there, to your knowledge, Acting Superintendent, or anybody on the panel, are there any other issues other than the construction and the bill that, hopefully we're going to get passed that could cause further delay?
Senator, as I was listening to Principal Masnayon's testimony, she brought up about the construction manager from DOE. We brought this up, that to Superintendent Fernandez to have a construction manager of DOE to oversee the construction, because program coordinators are the one overseeing. They're not construction. They're not in construction. Their expertise is not in construction. You need to be a construction person. You need to be an engineer, but right now it's program coordinators that are overseeing, and I'm concerned is the knowledge and the expertise in construction. That's why at that time the board did encourage Fernandez to hire a construction or an engineer, because with this project of Simon Sanchez, there's a lot of issues that have to be watched, but not program coordinators to oversee. Because if you see a program coordinator job description, I don't think there's anything there about construction. So at that time, Sabina Flores was sort of assisting the department. So I just hope that maybe you can insert that in the bill and have a construction for DOE construction manager or somebody that's expert in construction. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Gutierrez. I know this has come up in other hearings with the department, this need for a construction manager, Acting Superintendent?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we were looking at two. One, of course, is to make sure that, and the reason why we want two, primarily because we want one assigned specifically to Simon Sanchez, because that's a major project, and it's going to be anywhere between 3 to 4 years. The other CM that we were considering is for the 35 schools. And because of the MOU that we have with GPA, is that they've offered that their engineers, the different engineers that they have, civil engineers, architectural engineers, that they all then will be part as the CM to supervise all of the work that's being done at the 35 schools. I did state on my testimony that because we're using at least $2 million for the CM for Simon Sanchez, it has to be, it can only go up to September 24. So therefore, that's where you would need to then provide additional funding for the CM after September 24, because we can't go beyond that for the ARP monies.
Thank you. And I did, if anyone could provide an update, I always thought it was ironic that the snails caused a delay in the reconstruction of Simon Sanchez, because the only thing on the planet Earth that's slower than the snail is the effort to reconstruct Simon Sanchez High School. So did we relocate the snails? Does anybody know?
Sorry, before we go or proceed with that question, I wanted to clarify something. Senator, the construction manager will be provided by the bidder. So whoever bids for the project will have to provide their own construction management.
So we don't have to
No, whoever receives the contract, it's my understanding that it would have to be done by the private company would have to hire him.
I was just informed by our F&M manager that it really shouldn't be the company itself. It's like the fox watching the hen, so to speak. So it should be somebody else hired separately, independent of the
Maybe add that to your list.
contractor. Yes.
Sorry, before you move on, can we clarify with GEDA how the other 6 schools were proceeded with management? Is that too old of? Sorry.
No, I've been here for a while. We actually had SAMs working through DPW, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Barnett, can you?
Sorry. So the previous contracts, we had contracts administrators, we had inspectors, we had PE engineers, but our capacity has decreased, right? So now we are doing consultants. We're seeking out requests for proposal for CM contracts because that's professional engineer structure studies, architectural design, making sure we have building codes in compliance with our building codes law. So we usually seek out CM proposals now. Currently, we have an acting PE engineer, but he's not a classified employee. We just delegated him the authority to review our plans. So with this, you would have to have a CM on this construction.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, DPW.
No
You
problem.
can proceed.
Thank you, Senator. Just again, was there any update on the snails? No? Phil?
Well, at least my understanding with EPA, and I guess Senator Perez might be helpful with this, but my understanding normally is that if there are, either anything archaeological find or just that any species that are endemic to the island, that prior to any kind of construction being done, is that first of all, either you get the artifacts, removed and secured, and the same way with species as well, is that you're going to have to find them, remove them, and place them in a similar environment, and especially if they are considered as one of the endangered species on the island. But it would not stop the whole project from going. That's normally the process in the removal of any of those items.
Sorry, I was just, seems like Google is faster. I was just trying to get an answer on that. Okay, well, I'm good, Senator. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Senator
And good
Barnett.
luck, and Viva Sharks.
Biba. Thank you, Senator Barnett. I'm not too sure. Can Senator Perez, or who was here first, Senator Perez or Speaker? Speaker? I think Speaker, you can go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all of you who are here again regarding this project. Can I just get a general answer from DPW? You are in support of this, where you are going to become in charge now, again, of this project?
Sure, we're here to help GDOE and build Simon Sanchez.
All right, well, I support that, if that's the move. It was a big, huge thing for GDOE to say they were going to handle it all on their own. They've never handled any CIP project like that, that's for sure. And so, lesson learned for everybody, I think. But as to the snails, yeah, I looked all of this stuff up before I came because I wanted to see. But the last update that I could get, and I'm surprised you don't know, so I'm curious how close really we are to moving this project along. But this was a May 2022 update where Fernandez said, I think the options of relocating the colony would take too long. I heard an estimate of 2 years. Instead, they're going to adjust the design, leaving the southwest corner of the lot untouched so they can move forward. So that in turn cut the number of classrooms, right? By a significant number.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for that info.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
And so it made it, I was surprised, like how many classrooms they were cutting because of that. So is that the current plan? Because Dr. Speaker Wampat, you said the plan is now 100%. So what does the plan show? Are we lesser than the 90% plan in the number of classrooms?
So because of the endemic snails, we did have to redesign that portion and then readjust the plans and
Okay.
where the classrooms were going to be located, because otherwise they said it was going to stall the development.
All right, so then I think we've concluded that the snails are staying, the classrooms are being cut down to a smaller number of classrooms, but same size.
But we did bring up the concern that if they were going to stay, that might cause additional problems later.
Yes, it might.
So,
Activity that interrupts
Yes.
it. Yes, it's an endangered species. All right, I wanted to just also get a very general update on how many students we are currently planning for. This is the first time we've heard the plan is 100%. The last time we kept hearing 90% for almost over a year, that's for sure. So if it's 100% now, are we still planning for 1,900 students? Yes? Okay. And is that still your need?
our population currently has decreased, so we've been hovering around 1,560.
Okay, so that's a good safety. So the other option that Fernandez had discussed in the media was the costs, all right? So please correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Wampat, Speaker Wampat. When the law was originally passed, $65 million was the estimate. That's in 2013. 65 million. In May of 2022, the Superintendent Fernandez gave us an estimate of 138 million in costs based on these plans. And they knew that far exceeded the amount that we had set aside, so they were trying to cut costs. So they came up with this, that they were going to divide the project into the base bid, construction of classrooms, offices, cafeteria, the gym, the library, access roads and parking, and a track and football field. And an alternate bid, which would include the auditorium, the ROTC firing range, the credit recovery facility, solar panels, rainwater catchment, and landscaping elements. So are we still at this where we're dividing it into a base bid and alternate bid? Does anyone know? Do you know, DPW? Have you looked at this at all? Not yet,
No,
until after
we
this
have
bill
not.
passes?
Yeah, we
Okay,
haven't
so
shared us the design.
Speaker Wampat, yeah, is it still the plan to just do solicitation for the base bid and we'll come back later for the alternate bid?
What I had provided testimony on, rather than doing an RFP, was to consider a solicitation to do a multi-tier
Yes.
RFP. So that means, so it just depends on the project, because when I saw, or rather when I met with several of the government officials, that they were looking at, yes, building the school itself first, and separately maybe the auditorium, and then separately other parts of the facility. But we don't know that, yet, because we have not put it out for,
Okay,
for a bid.
If this bill's passed, that would be determined, and we incorporate your suggestion, that would all be determined by DPW?
Yes.
Okay. And in September 2022, the budget law amended this KÅHAT law to increase the amount up to 166 million. That's where the 166 million came from, and the 16.3 per year. So I'm glad that the author of the bill kept that amount at least. That was September 2022, and we didn't go higher, although that's huge. I think the most expensive school we're going to have ever built in the history of Guam, for sure, and financing it this way. So the financing, GEDA, do we still need to pledge the general fund, or can we use TEFF, pledge just the TEFF?
Back then, when we testified, the TEFF we used the general fund just to give us the option to pay. I think TEFF is dedicated to education, and the 16 mil would take up a big chunk of it.
So even now, we could not afford to finance this out of the TEFF and continue to cover the GDOE basic operations?
Yes, that's my understanding.
All right. There was a letter regarding compact impact affecting the financing for other schools. Does that, the stopping of the compact impact affect, is that going to affect us here? Like, are we going to be able to make the financing of those other schools?
No, ma'am. What happened with the schools that were financed with compact impact is we knew at the time that compact impact would be ending. So the last few years were going to be paid up, and we told them, was disclosed that we would be paying out of the general fund for that.
Okay.
And it's this upcoming fiscal year that you'll see the debt service.
All right. And so today, the bill is saying it's taking out the part that where GEDA was going to be the financer, right? That had been put in quite recently, Public Law 36-107, so just last term. And at that time, the testimony from GEDA was that it was going to give you more flexibility. It was going to, it said, ensure the lowest borrowing rate for a lease. No, it said, this bill includes a provision that allows the financing to be issued through GEDA, which would make the lease a triple tax-exempt bond financing. To this point, Guam has a relatively unique tool. This means that a California resident can purchase Guam's municipal bonds and receive the same tax advantages as if they purchased a California municipal bond. This tool offers GovGuam the ability to significantly increase the potential buyer base for the future Simon Sanchez lease revenue bonds. By our estimates, this benefit could result in 50 to 75 BPS or more of interest rate savings, which could translate into as much as 30 to 40 million in debt service savings over a 30-year financing. This our new format here in this bill affect those benefits?
Yes, Senator. And again, just with the working group, it was difficult to interpret GEDA as the financer and not related to the leasing company.
So we'll be giving up pretty much that $30 to $40 million in debt service savings over a 30-year financing that was estimated back then, just last year?
Yes, Senator, and it's because the priority is to reduce the instance of protests that the working group felt was going to be an issue.
So I'm concerned about that. You know, I really want to save as much money as we can. It is so expensive, and you know, we could use every dollar on additional GDOE things for the next 30 years. Yes. All right. I just want to make sure that when I'm all for the flexibility in how we're going to solicit this, but my concern is, people in the community are talking to me that they're concerned that this movement, but I can't find it for myself, so it's something that's going to be done through DPW, is like that it's to favor certain contractors over the others. And I think maybe we're not at that stage, but by allowing DPW to decide that, that's the potential, that DPW can decide, well, we're going to separate this all out, right? Where the contractor doesn't have to finance anymore, and because we're going to only give them a few projects to build, and we'll give it to this one company, and then because they can't qualify for the financing part, right? And we'll give the financing part to another. I don't know. I'm just saying if there's a potential for that, I am concerned. And I like, you know, what GEDA was saying about tying the contractors to their financing of the whole project so that they have an investment and a stake at getting it all done efficiently. But of course, costs. That's why we divide it. That's why I remember the debate very much. I was really hesitant to allow GDOE to have this authority to do this construction and everything. And then we ended up dividing it up, right? Because it would have been cost savings had it been done, right? That you divide up the construction versus all the other different parts. But it just didn't happen that way. And I don't know if it's politics or what, but all right. And the other suggestions that were made by you, Mr. Sablan, by land management, I'm hoping we can consider each one by one. They're all good. I thought they were good suggestions. There are details as to who, you know, any changes here, and your suggestions, Speaker Wampet, as to, I agree with your suggestion. Wait, I want to just double check one more. There's one I didn't really understand. You want the furniture and equipment maintenance costs to be paid by DOE? Because this is all written that FF&E is all contractors' responsibility.
Because the way the bill is written right now, it did say that after, 5 years, then yes, DOE will be, paying for it, so.
And so what do you want?
Well, when I say for DOE, what I'm thinking, of course, is if the financer pays for this, then the debt obligation would definitely be a lot, more expensive. You're carrying it for 30 years. And versus, and of course, the board might shoot me for this or fire me tomorrow, but by having DOE do this, it's that it's definitely going to be, cheaper in the long run when we ourselves are the ones purchasing, these equipment. And I say this because in past experiences, I remember when we were building the other schools, we were getting requests, like for example, an administrator's office for furniture was to the tune of like $20,000, for, just one office space. And I think we would have better control when the department handles that.
Deputy Director Linda, are you familiar with that? I mean, I remember that also. So are we going to be able, in our solicitation, who will decide what's the type of furniture that will be included, what type of desk? Is it going to be GDOE? Is it going to be according to whatever the teachers say they want? Or how does that work? Or is that not already in the plans that we've paid all that money for?
So when we met with the architects, we were also involved in itemizing what type of equipment will go into certain classrooms. And we were very mindful about the cost and the type of furniture, for example, what will go into a principal's office or the conference room. So we didn't want to make that same mistake.
All right, so it's safe to say that the architect has included specs in the plans for the furniture?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought, because he says something about that somewhere in one of the articles. Okay, so what about, my last question, Mr. Chair, unless you can come back to me later, is this Construction management, yeah, I totally agree. No way is the contractor going to be our construction manager. That's our role. It's our quality assurance, right? And, but you said you are currently paying for construction management with some kind of federal funds that expire in September 2024?
Yes, when this was first discussed at the time, prior to this current bill, is that we were saying that we're going to need a CM, and we were willing, based on the amount of monies that we're going to use, ARP monies to be used for our other schools, is that we were going to set aside $2 million for the CM. However, as you all know, September 24 is when it expires, so that means we will not be able to take it on for the other 2 or 3, 4 years that it's going to take to complete the school.
How long do you estimate? What did the architect estimate it would take to build the school?
What?
3 years?
3 years, yeah.
Oh, man. Okay, so 3 years construction, right? And, okay. And so we'd have to cover 3 years. Well, you've got until September, 1 year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, if they were going to start, this year, then,
Yeah.
right, we would be able to put out the procurement for $2 million for the first
Yes,
year.
for 1 year.
Yes.
Under ARP, okay. Director Ibanez, how soon do you think DPW would be able to come up with a solicitation based on this law or this bill?
After we review the design, and then we put everything, our boiling plates and our templates, and then we prep out advertisement and our timelines, we're looking at 30 days just to put out the bid. If we go to a RFP, there's negotiation, there's evaluation teams that we have to look at. So we're looking at 6 months to put this out, if we go with a request for proposal. But depending on their design, once we review the design, we'll determine which procurement module that we would go, if it's IFB or RFP or multi-step. But right now, I can't say much because we have not seen the design.
Are you able to use an IFB and incorporate that the contractor is going to do the financing?
Yes, we can do a multi-step that we based on qualification, financial, and past performance qualification of the contractor.
So what part of the plans would make you decide not to use a multi-step IFB?
Well, because I'm hearing 60, 90, or 100 design, I don't know the value of what the architecture have put out, the cost to construct this whole entire school. So that's where I'm at as a procurement contract advisor, right? Is that I cannot decide which procurement mode until we see the design, because what I understand from the principal, you have collateral equipment, you have maintenance in there, and you have certain disciplines for a classroom, right? So those are the areas that we would have to look at on what scoping and what procurement mode we would follow.
All right. And
Yeah.
sorry, Superintendent Dr. Wampat, Speaker Wampat, can you please confirm the plan or the design is 100%?
Yes, because we have a copy of it already, and so does the principal.
Okay.
Yes.
And we are able to divide some of the alternate bid parts, meaning the lesser important ones, right? Or the options, maybe, can I call it that? Because I agree that if we're driving up costs because we're adding in indoor firing ranges, I say cut it instead of continuing to delay this and drive up the costs. And we're already up to 166 million. That was September 2022 estimate. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping DPW will give us their best advice on that. Basics and alternates or options, right? That if the costs have gone up since September 2022, And we're either looking at going over 166 million or cutting some of those options. And yeah, I hope, Madam Principal, I totally support the rebuilding of the school, but I want a school. I don't think I need a firing range to be the top priority for this school when we're cutting classrooms, right? I would rather see we make up for the space for those classrooms in that area or something. I'm not sure if they considered that, but anyways, I very much am grateful for all of your work on all of it. And of course, I support, I'm sorry. I want to say I'm sorry to you and the students and all of those graduates who can't get their time back there. Very sorry. So let's see what we can do. Thank you, Superintendent, for really helping us to move this along, getting us back, I guess, to basics and focused back on exactly what we need to do. We're putting a lot of work on DPW. This is a big thing to get them to do this solicitation, and I can't imagine how it can be done in 30 days, but good luck to you, Situs Masi. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to all of you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And we'll go ahead and ask Senator Perez now.
This is Masi, Mr. Chair, and I just want to welcome the Shark family today, and thank you for your persistence and patience through the decade. So I think the retiring speaker had a lot of great questions. I, too, am very concerned about the financing and the funding. So maybe if you can reiterate or reinforce. So I was hoping that we can get the same low interest rate bonds. So would this contractor have access to the bonds that GEDA would normally have access to?
So the contractor will be able to secure single tax exempt bonds. If GEDA issued, we'd be able to secure triple tax exempt bonds. But again, the devil was in the details when they were trying to, the former DOE attorney was putting together the procurement. There was just too many conflicting details that she just could not resolve between having GEDA as the role of GEDA in the whole thing. Again, this is brand new. This is brand new to the process. And so again, it was decided by the working group to go through the traditional model that worked for the other two schools.
Thank you for that response. So I'm looking at the bill. So there's a section here, 558D110, and it talks about how the contractor is responsible for the connection of utilities, but also the payment throughout the term of the lease. Is that correct? So would that drive up the expense and potentially is this one opportunity to save?
Well, what we know of developers is that they're there, they have to cover their costs, plus make some profit for them. And so if they were responsible for payment, we want them to be responsible for the connection, but for the payment of all utilities, of course, they would charge a service charge to the government for that service.
So this is a potential amendment where we can hopefully bring down the cost?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The other thing is liquidated damages. So I know this looks very similar to the bill we passed for the hospital complex. It's one contractor, RFP. But in this one, I don't recall we had liquidated damages in the hospital one. And can you explain how this is going to work in this RFP, or is this a typical element?
I know that we went into more detail on liquidated damages. Again, this new bill reflects what we did for the previous procurements, JFK and the 4 schools. So, if we want to add in, that would be up to us. Otherwise, we would probably add it to negotiations.
Okay, so this is another element of where we can potentially lower costs. But of course, we want to hold them accountable.
Yes.
To be able to build within a certain timeline.
I think that's part of DPW's requirement as well.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
It's one of our procurement requirements when we go out to any procurement module.
then it's standard. Is that what you're saying? Okay, good. The other question I had was in regards to the design. So when was the design completed?
We ended meeting with TRMA around 2021, the fall.
And 100% design?
Well, with us, it was just pretty much the layout of the building, the types of equipment and furniture, but they also needed to do the drawings and the more detailed description for each one.
So
I'm not sure
it's
when
not
they
100%.
completed the 100% for everything else outside of the design.
So it's not 100% at this point?
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Is that a yes or no? Because if you...
I'm not sure when they completed the 100% design. For us, when we stopped meeting with TRMA to discuss, it was in 2021, and it is at 100%.
Okay, so all the drawings and specs...
The specs are complete, yes.
Okay. Does this include Guam Tropical Energy Code? Does the design include the Guam Tropical Energy Code?
I'm not sure about that one.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is Phil Tovis, our facilities and maintenance manager, so he'll be able to answer some of those questions.
Hi.
Senator Perez, can you go ahead and repeat the question?
Yeah,
And then-
thank you, Mr. Tovis, for being here. So the question I had was, first of all, do you concur that the design is 100%?
Yes, it is,
complete?
Senator.
And does it include the Guam Tropical Energy Code?
Yes, it does.
Okay,
They have to
perfect.
go back a little bit to make sure, because it just came into effect in February or March. So they did some tweaking. They were following the National Energy Code, and that was very close, but not close enough. So they came back and tweaked it to meet full compliance of the Guam Tropical Energy Code.
Okay, that's great. That's going to conserve, energy at least by 50%. So that would definitely help with the power bills. I guess the other question I had, so in the bill, it talks about the contractor may assign without the need of the consent of GDOE the lease. So this is always a concern for me. I think this came up in the bill with the hospital complex as well. My concern is that the lease can be handed over to another party without DOE's consent. Is this a cause of concern for you as well? Acting Superintendent.
Well, no, we don't, I think so, because we actually do have that same situation right now with JFK, that now there is a new owner, and I met the individual, as a matter of fact, about a week and a half ago. So long as they're able to continue to follow, the contract, and then we, of course, will continue with the same debt obligation, is not increased or decreased.
Okay, it says here in the bill without consent. Would you
Yeah,
rather
because-
have consent?
No.
No?
No,
You don't want consent?
It's just going to bog down a lot of things again if we're going to. I don't know if DPW prefers to do it, but if everything is already signed, everything, the contract is being adhered to, then I personally don't think, but I'm not a contractor, so it's very difficult. So long as it doesn't affect, I believe, the debt obligation for the government to pay, and that they continue to maintain the school, ensure the school, just follow the original contract, then, and all they did is just change hands.
Okay. So this question would go to Ms. Garcia. Sorry, I'm trying to think. So the way it's described by the acting superintendent, the language here says without consent, but at least have some sort of oversight. I think that's important to know that whoever the lease is being handed off to is a reputable person, a reputable entity. I think that's important to know, rather than just have their word, saying that they're going to abide by a contract. I think it's very critical to have that sort of due diligence when we're dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars, right? Do you see this as bogging down the process?
Again, this was put together to reflect what's done before. I think this provides flexibility for the developer. If for whatever reason they can no longer perform the job. Again, there are contractual obligations that must be met, and those are detailed in our trust agreements, in the trust agreements between the developer and the bondholders. The developer is required to fulfill certain needs to include ensuring they're financially stable, because they have to report on their finances as well. And it's the trustee who will represent the underwriters if they see any issues. For the government, we're just leasing the property as part of the lease back. So for us, like the superintendent said, for the customer, it may not be an issue who the owner is, as long as the obligations continue.
Okay, so what you're saying is there's a layer of safeguards because they're dealing with a different financial
Yes.
institution that has higher rigorous.
Right, because if they mess up, then they can't do, it's pretty much becomes a black mark in the market, so.
Okay, I think that's all my questions, but again, I do reiterate there are some good points that were made earlier by Mr. Sablan as well as the director, Joe Borja. So thank you so much for your time, and this was Masi. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Perez. I'll go ahead and recognize my colleague, Senator Joe San Agustin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I look at the board members, the only one I recognize very well is Ms. Gutierrez. Because when I was elected to the board back in 2006, I was very concerned about Simon Sanchez because my son graduated there. And I remembered all the problems there. And when I was on the board, I went after Simon Sanchez almost daily, if not weekly. And it's shameful that even what the speaker brought up, what the bill that we just passed last year, that was my bill. And ever since I've been elected, I've been chasing after the superintendent. And that's why when they mentioned about the snail, I wonder if it moved up to the superintendent's office, because it's been a snail process since we've been trying to settle Simon Sanchez. And it's amazing that it's still up at Simon Sanchez, but there's something going on. But thank you, Madam Superintendent. You're there, and hopefully you're going to resurrect it, and hopefully the new incoming superintendent doesn't slow it down. We have a bill here. I'm a co-sponsor of the bill. When it was last year's bill, I chased after the superintendent. What do you need to get it done? The biggest issue back then, and all of you remember, when they were dealing with JFK, don't make DPW handle it no more. Because back then, there are different folks there today than there were back then. And JFK was a runaway school on cost. And I graduated, I'm alumni of JFK. I'm proud, I love the way it looks. But I'm also very concerned about Simon Sanchez, because I live in Chico. And I've been after that now for what, 6, 8 years? 6 years on the board, chasing after it, helping the ROTC get their room settled, because they provide all the funding. All we had to do was let the money go. And then to see Tina here, and then Tina's like, we're trying our best to figure it out. GEDA could handle it. Now it's back to DPW. I'm just concerned because I heard earlier that Mr. Boras said that maybe we need to identify somebody's classified because everybody's, replaceable. No? My only concern is that if the bill is passed, and DPW said that hopefully 30 days minimum, could be as much as 6 months. And the speaker mentioned that can you carve it out so that you can make sure the 3rd days at least does the groundbreaking, and then at least the walls start going up, and then figure out the the concerns that you identify funny because I'm reading the testimony of the superintendent, Speaker Warnpet, 6 million. You don't need 6 million. I honestly believe you can encumber ARP money and pay for it all. And tell USDOE that you covered it all. Put it on contract. Spend the 6 million today. Cover the construction manager. If not, then I'm going to ask DPW, put it in your budget, you need a construction manager. Then let's figure out a way how to help you in your budget. And then we'll grab the money from DOE, every penny they got, because it's their project, it's not yours. We need to figure out a way to stop making excuses of getting Simon Sanchez done. Because, you know, when I was on the board and Ms. Gutierrez was there, we were together and we were battling it out. The government of Guam's messed up when we had 80 acres, Anderson South, 80 acres for DOE. And that was provided by then the delegate, Mrs. Berdalio. And all the reasons to screw that up happened. It was perfect. End up giving up the property because why? DOE or GovGuam didn't do anything. It was a prime example of a lack of interest or snail. But you know what? Enough is enough, folks. Ms. Nayon, I remembered her when she first got selected to be up there. Says, congratulations, God bless you. Please take care of our students. And she's still there. And you know what? I've co-sponsored every bill to fix Simon Sanchez. And I'm only hoping that when this bill passes, that actions happen. I'm hoping before even November. Hopefully, Ms. Nayon, Simon Sanchez says, 37 Guam legislators, please come up for the groundbreaking. And please, and when it does happen before November, invite Mrs. Speaker Warnpet because she'll be replaced by the new superintendent. And I'm just very concerned that for 10 years, all the reasons to fix Simon Sanchez, and you know, you read a testimony earlier, the same people coming back to testify to support Simon Sanchez. Every 2-3 years, promises made. Promises were made even by me. Or a commitment was made by me. Not a promise, a commitment to take care of Sanchez. I know earlier it was mentioned that Ms. Gutierrez brought it up. 2 senators introduced for charter school. I was one of them. We were trying to find a way to get Simon Sanchez built. To the point that even GCC, Ms. Okada showed up. Dr. Okada said, we'll turn it into a college. So at the end of their 4 years at Simon Sanchez, they got an associate degree. That didn't work. And then what happened? Nothing happened at Simon Sanchez. It's just amazing. We want a school done. If the design and everything is complete, share that with us, por favor. Because by the time it gets to the floor, if we don't have the design, I'm going to ask the author of the bill, get the design before we move forward. Because you know what? If we see the design, we can actually say, wow, there's movement. There's movement. Other than the equipment and the books and the shoes that are sitting at other schools not moving anywhere, there's movement for Simon Sanchez. Too much talk, no action. And Ms. Gutierrez always reminds me, Afa Zosti. And I'm like, ay Maria, Afa na superintendent. Tony Sanchez, the mayor then, was not even thinking of running back then when I got on the board. But I only hope for the best, and I will continue to support Simon Sanchez getting rebuilt, or brand new, preferably, not rebuilt, but a brand new school. And if need be, start tearing down buildings, which means you do a groundbreaking. Where are you going to start? But start tearing down buildings, that means you're moving. If you can move FB students to Ukidu, when that's settled, and you can move Simon Sanchez students to double session so the construction can speed up, then do it. The students have been waiting. There are parents, there are folks that graduated from Simon Sanchez that are already, I think they're grandparents. We need to stop talking, we need to see action. DPW hasn't seen the design. That should have been given to them when this bill was introduced so they will know, and they know how to carve out and be able to testify tonight and says, we know what it looks like, we know what we want to carve out, we know how we can move, and they can actually tell us 30 days for this part, maybe 6 months for the other parts. But at least, gosh, the bill was introduced and they didn't even get a piece of the pie. The snail is on the ground on Simon Sanchez. You can carve that out. Do what you need to do. The education of our students in GEGU is at stake. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I just hope for the best that the bill moves forward as faster than the snail so we can get this done. Thank you.
I'll go ahead and give another round to Madam Speaker.
Thank you. I just want that he made me more nervous, so I just want to ask if we have the plan and it's at 100%. From what I read, the plan was that they were going to continue to use the old buildings and they're going to kind of fit everybody in there while they construct on another portion of the lot, and then they're going to move everybody into the new portions and then destroy the old building and do whatever they're going to do with that part. But yeah, I would actually like to hear back from DPW again soon, as soon as possible, to tell us again, after seeing the plans, if you still think this bill is feasible the way it's written, please. Jesus Masi. Thank you.
Mrs. Gutierrez, you're recognized.
Can I respond to my former colleague?
You can.
You know, you're right, Senator Agustin. It's long already. And you know, it's only tonight, I hate to say this, it's only tonight I hear that they're 100% complete. The board has not been informed how much percentage, the last was 90%. And I have been pushing that let's have a groundbreaking so that we can show the people, the stakeholder of Sanchez, that something is happening. Taja. I hate to say that. This is, and I'm glad that if Public Works is going to come in now, because they have the expertise, they have someone that used to be at DOE and started with the Simon Sanchez construction, is Randy Romero. When Randy was there, we always get an update. And I've been pushing, let's just, get the shovel. Maybe we shove it near the snail. So just to show the people of, the stakeholders of, because that's what they're waiting. I have people that I'm listening to the radio are calling in. Can we get an update, please? Just to let the people of GEGU, the stakeholders. Tonight it's 90%, I mean 100%, that shocked me. Because the board was not informed that it was now it's 100%. But I'm just glad that if public works are going to get involved, they have the expertise, because the Department of Education don't have the expertise in construction, and that's what we need. So I hope that Mr. Vanis can consider that maybe at the public square you can get Randy to help, because he really knows from the beginning. He was the one that started in the involvement with Sabina Flores. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Gutierrez. If there's no further questions or issues with my colleagues, I guess we'll proceed. I guess not. Good? Okay, I'm not here to give any more testimony. I just, you know, I'm ready to get the groundbreaking done and over with. Hell, I'll even drive the bulldozer. So, again, it's my commitment to get this thing rolling and moving as whatever, however we need to get it done, who I need to talk to, point me in the direction. I want to get this done as soon as possible. I don't have any kids. I won't be having any kids for sure. But that's not the reason I should be finishing this school or getting it done. It is my commitment that I asked for all the issues to be brought into the light in the media. Ms. Masanayan, you were there. You started with me. I was literally your ribbon cutter. I think you met me before you were even hired to go to Simon Sanchez. And at that time, it was John Fernandez. And again, I'm not here to keep going around in circles. I want to get this school done and get it over with. I don't care who gets the credit. I don't care who holds a shovel, who drives the bulldozer. I don't give a crap. I just want it done. And let the next generation have a new school. Because I ran on the premise that no generation should face the same challenges as the previous. And heck, 10 years, leche. That's la puta. I had to run for senator to fix this. This is wrong. So I'm trying to divert back to this to a tried and true program, an operation. If we built 6 other schools with this program, then I think it works. Of course, I will take the recommendations into consideration, and I'll move forward, and I'll advise you individuals that I did take your changes into consideration, and this is what the bill is. And when we get to the floor, I hope that my colleagues support me. And with that being said, again, enough circles. If there are no further testimonies or questions, the committee appreciates your participation this evening's public hearing and will continue to read written testimony until Friday, May 5th, 2023. Please address your testimony. Senator Roy A.B. Quinata, Chairperson, Committee on Infrastructure, Economic Development, Simon Sanchez High School, Disability Service, Self-Determination, Historic Preservation, Housing, Public Economy, and Guam Build-Up, and can be dropped to physically to the mailroom here at the Guam Congress Building or sent to office of Senator Quinata at guamlegislature.org or WhatsApp me at 472-4826. Thank you. God bless. And this concludes the public hearing for Simon Sanchez High School at 7:37 p.m. This public hearing is officially adjourned. Take care. God bless.